Money. Everybody wants it. No matter where you live or what you believe, we all need money to survive. You might not say it, but come on. Who doesn't want a life free of financial stress and strain? And yet, only a small percentage of people enjoy true wealth and financial freedom. According to the National Bureau of Economic Research, 2/3 of the wealth in the U.S. is owned by only 5% of Americans. Broaden the search and you'll discover that the richest 1% own 44% of all the world's wealth. Hard to believe, right? So why is that? We could look at more charts and stats, but they all make the same point. While everyone wants to be rich, few people are. No surprise, really. But what is surprising is that these stats don't seem to help us understand why. Why aren't more people wealthy? Why do we just accept that some are rich while most are not? What do the rich 5% and the elite 1% know that you don't? And how did they learn it? Two theories on this. First, you're incapable. Unintelligent, lazy, submissive, afraid, or just plain unlucky. I'm not buying this one. There's no way that 95% of us are inferior to a privileged few. Second theory, we are all victims of a brilliant heist. Not exactly like the ones you see in movies, but equally devious. A centuries-old plan that favors the elite and exploits the rest. No one sees it because it's hiding in plain sight. It's the system we live in, and what's most troubling, it's totally legal. The famous inventor and futurist R. Buckminster Fuller named it back in 1983, GRUNCH, an acronym for Gross Universal Cash Heist. The greatest heist of all time, executed by a faceless, unofficial elite operating to their best advantage and keeping everyone else in their service. Sounds like another conspiracy theory, right? But when you dig in, it begins to add up. How else do you make sense of such an imbalance? For the answers, we look to those who do well in spite of it. People from humble beginnings. Those who work around the elite and understand their game. People who took our shared dream of financial freedom and, despite the odds stacked against them, made it their personal reality. I'm Dr. Pedram Shojai, the urban monk. Sounds a bit strange to hear a monk talk about money, right? Well, when I came down off the mountain, I had to deal with money like everyone else. So I've set out to understand why it causes so much grief for so many people. To be healthy and prosper requires money. And most of my patients' stress comes from money issues. Most divorces are over money. Too many people today are stumbling on the traditional paths for making a living. Outsourcing, downsizing, AI, and the pandemic, to name a few. 114 million people lost their jobs recently, and fingers crossed, they all come back. But we need more than luck here. If you don't get the money game, there's a good chance you're being manipulated. We need to even the playing field, boost our financial IQ, and get our fair share of financial success.
I am a fourth generation Japanese American, which is my way of saying I don't speak Japanese. And I was born on Oahu in Honolulu, but my father was transferred to an outer island, the big island of Hawaii. It's the southernmost part of the United States. The story of Rich Dad, Poor Dad begins when I moved across town from not a poor part of town, but it wasn't rich, I would say. It was very, very working class, mostly Japanese, Chinese, and Filipinos. I don't know why, but we moved across town, and suddenly I was in a school for rich kids. So across the street was the school for the plantation kids. So our family, from my mother's side and my father's side, came over to work the sugar plantations. And I went to Riverside School where the rich white kids went to school. And the world was so far apart just in this one street. And I realized for the first time I was poor, so I'm 9 years old. And the reason I knew I was poor because my classmates had new bicycles. And my father, bless his heart, he was a school teacher. He was head of education. But he bought me this, I still remember this blue bicycle. I took my life in my hands every time I rode that bicycle. It fell apart, the chain came off, the pedals fell off, but it was $5. I still remember the price. I'm going, and my kids have these brand new Schwinn's and all that stuff, So finally I realized, I raised my hand and I asked my school teacher, and I said, when are we going to learn about money? She goes, and she sounded like church lady, Dana Carvey, the love of money is the root of all evil. And I said, wait a minute, when am I going to learn about money? And she just kept giving me this church line. And I said, what the hell? And finally I said, why don't we learn about money? She says, you're here to get a job. And I said, but isn't the end product of a job is the money? She goes, yeah. I said, so what? Let me just skip the job and get to the money. And I was a pest. So that's why I kept pestering my teacher. When am I going to learn about money? And finally she said to me, why don't you go ask your father? After all, he's my boss. Why don't you ask him why we don't learn about money? And I said, well, that's a good idea. So I go home and I ask the old man, I said, when am I going to learn about money? Same answer. And finally, he just blurted it out. And this, I still remember, he says, the government does not allow us to teach the subject of money.
Hey, it's Dr. Pedram Shojai, the host of the Great Heist film. We are doing a free screening of this film. You just saw a clip. You could see the entire film for free. Click right here and you'll get access.